Hey guys, get ready with me while I talk about the book Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl. Okay, so first I'm going to introduce the main characters. Our main character is Linda, and she's a mother, and she's owned by Dr. Flint, the next character, who is her master, and he is a very terrible man. He's just super vile, really hostile, just really mean. Next we have her grandmother, which is like somewhat, we don't really know the direct correlation between them, but she calls her the grandmother. Next we have Ellen, which is her daughter, Benjamin, which is her son, and then Miss Flint, who is also a very vile woman. These are the most important characters throughout the book. Okay, so the prompt is, by reading the book, what meaningful insight about life have you gained and how is it conveyed to the reader? And I said a meaningful insight I gained from the book was suffering for your loved ones is never wasted. The author conveys this message by telling people her point of view on the web of slavery. On the web of slavery, including experiences like propaganda slave masters would feed the slaves, teaching them what to think about the North or the Free States. She also shares her experience of living in a shed for more than 7 years to escape her vile master, Dr. Flint. One passage that conveys the insight is after her children are born, and Dr. Flint is just making these really condescending remarks about how he is really excited to have 2 new slaves on his plantation. Later in the passage, Flint comes to visit Linda, and he tells her that the man that would like to buy her, which is the father of her children, went to talk to him. After denying any knowledge of this at all, Flint got very aggravated with Linda and grabbed her very hard, to which her child Benjamin started to leave to go report to the grandmother. And Flint grabbed the child and threw him against the wall and would not let Linda go and rush to the aid of her child. The suffering her and her children endured made Linda realize how much of a threat Dr. Flint was to her children, so she decided that she needed to escape. My quote that I chose was, when realizing the fate of her children was in Dr. Flint's hands, she reflects saying this on page 80. I would much rather see them killed than to have given them up into his power. I feel like this directly relates to my insight because her kids endured suffering, and she endured suffering, and it turned out to be worth it once they were finally stable in the North. Another passage that conveys my insight is when she stayed in a shed for 7 years as a runaway slave to gain protection for her and her children. Linda was working on Dr. Flint's plantation, which I feel like we can all agree that this is just like a terrible place to be. She decided to run away after hearing a slave report that Dr. Flint was boasting about, saying how he's gonna break in her children and get them ready for slavery. She decided to run away. By doing this, she created a diversion, and she hid in her friend's closet for a year. But after hearing that Flint knew where she was staying, she decided to move to her grandma's backyard, where there was a shed. The shed was very tiny, very cramped, but it was worth it because she could hear her children's voices when they were in the proximity. A quote that I chose was, when Linda was spending time in the shed, she related how hard it was for her to not speak to her children. On page 148, she says, season after season, year after year, I peeped at my children's faces and heard their sweet voices with a heart yearning all the while to say, your mother is here. This relates to my insight because it again shows how much she was restricted from doing everything while patiently waiting and enduring so much suffering to eventually see and talk to her loved ones. Like I said earlier, the insight I gained from the book was suffering for your loved ones is never wasted. This matters to me personally because I can relate to the message with small-scale things. Like, if my brother breaks his water bottle and needs to use mine. But I feel like I could also relate to this on a much deeper level. Although I have not endured as much suffering as Linda in the book has, I feel like you can still relate to the message of the book no matter how much you have suffered or how much you continue to suffer. And that's the final tutorial. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned for the next book talk.